Welcome once again to Enharmony, a space to know deeper the authentic reality, the so-called tree of lives. And we urgently need to know it very well, so we are no longer deceived. Because nowadays we keep existing, believing a series of lies, which are keeping us from living fully, developing our essential wholeness. And today I'm going to give you a few lies. There are a huge amount of lies, but I'm going to expose a few of them so you can deduce on your own. We are told things like humanity descends from hominoids, apes, and our bodies can only live for a few decades, 90 at most. Very few go past the 100 years. We are also told that the human body needs lots of physical food in order to survive and also receive external medicines to get healed when it's sick. We are also told that we need a huge amount of external information so we succeed in life, that we need many instructors and teachers, masters of all sorts. Many also believe this universe have been created by a benevolent God, and so on and so on. But let's go step by step. First of all, what we know as human being is very much humus. Humus is the residue, and that word is precisely the origin of the word human. Because humanity actually descends from a large amount of hybrid crossings from different species, not only hominoids. Obviously, there were hominoids which are present in our genes, but they were not the only ones from which we descend, because there were types of humans that were not from the Earth, were what we may call stellar humanities, and they mixed with species from the Earth. But let's leave that for the end. Now, in spite of all those mixes, our human body has a tremendous potential. However, it's not working 100%. Basically because we are overfeeding it with physical food, especially food which is anti-physiological. We even are told in ancient accounts that originally the human being did not consume the food that we eat today. Even in the book of Genesis, we can read, "You shall eat bread with the sweat of your forehead." And the word used is lechem, which means cooked food, in which obviously we find cooked cereals and legumes. Later on came the introduction of animal products, all of which generate mucus, especially the cooked cereals, because the body generates mucus in order to protect itself against the acid environment of the cooked cereals and starch in general. And this mucus accumulates, generating an obstruction of vitality that keeps the body from developing its true potential. Not only energetic, spiritual potential, but also the self-healing process. And this is why we normally experience hunger as well, because the toxicity in the body makes us hungry. Actually, notice how in the countries that suffer plagues of starvation, such as Africa or countries in South America, even in India, usually children have swollen bellies. And this is not because of a lack of food, but because they eat lots of starch, cooked cereals that inflame the inner bowels. And since that's the only thing they get even more sick. The starch is the food of the slaves. The population has always been controlled with mucus-forming foods, so they cannot think properly. Actually, in Spanish, the starch is known as almidón. Almi, alma, soul. Adon, Lord. So starch is used as the Lord of the soul, entraps the soul. This is why the pharmaceutical industry is growing, making huge amounts of money at the expense of the bad health of humanity. They produce many medicines that they sell as something absolutely necessary to heal the body. And the most funny thing is that doctors use a very deceptive concept which is known as placebo effect, which consists on selling people a medicine that has no chemical effect at all. However, it triggers healing processes. What they do not tell you is that those healing processes are the power of the body and the mind, which is activated when the person that is consuming those medicines believes they are healing their body. So it's not the medicine but their own capacity of self-healing what's healing them actually. But of course, doctors are not going to tell you about that. In the same way, we are told that these bodies that we have can only live a very short period of time. However, the truth is that ancient humanities were able to survive hundreds of years, and our physical body would be able to live even 1,000 years, even fusing itself with the true reality. This is even present in ancient accounts. In the story of Prophet Enoch, for instance, the book of Genesis says that Enoch walked with the divine birth, with the tetragrammaton, and he was took up. This means translated as he walked with God, but this is not the proper translation. He walked with Yud Hei Vav Hei, which means that he had developed the 4 divine bodies that correspond to the real mankind. The first body could be the emanated body, coming from the original source. Then the mental Adamic body, then the astral emotional body, and then the energetic body. Those lower 3 are the divine soul, that is actually the chariot or vehicle of the emanated body, the divine being, which uses the 3 lower bodies as the so-called Merkaba, the spiritual vehicle, crossing dimensions. Actually, Enoch was took up to a higher reality because the level of vibration of his physical body was equal to the level of vibration of his divine soul. So it merged with the tree of lives. But of course, if we keep poisoning the body, not only with physical food, but with negative thoughts and negative emotions, it's impossible to develop those divine bodies. Now notice that those 4 bodies is a process of flourishing with our inner gifts. This means developing the divine verb which comes from the source. The divine verb are the qualities of the emanated being, the unconditional love, the pure life, expansive conscience and deep serenity, which helps us develop the mental body, the emotional body, and the purified energy body that can heal this body and gives us all the wisdom and knowledge and understanding that we need. The intuitions of wisdom lead us to explore and learn, acquiring knowledge on our own, and finally understanding the connections. This is why we don't need lots of information from the outside. However, as this process is not developed, then we are told that we need to read many books full of information, most of which is false. We are forced to learn from many teachers and instructors, go to the school, university, institutes, so we have a prosperous life. But most people are suffering, are enslaved in jobs that they do not like. So this is a system which is not working. Something is missing. What we need are masters that show the way, show how can we learn from our inner being. This is what some of us are doing with this type of channel, expanding the view and offering something different. Because otherwise people turn their attention to gurus, politicians, and of course religion. This is why many say, no, you need to pray to God so you receive His blessings and get healed and have abundance in your life. But religious people are suffering as well, even more than many others. Because the concept of an external God has nothing to do with the true divine being, which is not a separate entity whom we have to pray for things. It's rather the contrary. If we have received the qualities of the divine being inside, we have to express the unconditional love, flourish with the true life, with the true conscience that makes us discern the false from the true and see all the traps in calm, so we attract the abundance that we deserve as members of the cosmic body, in the cosmic man, the Adam Katmon, the original mankind. We should not pray to external gods or even a supreme god, because that's idolatry. That is putting our attention to something external and therefore giving out our energy. This was actually taught by Apostle Paul, when he said, "It is not I who lives, but the Anointed One who lives in me." Therefore, when we receive the divine birth, it's the divine mind, the divine heart, and the divine body what lives through us. Thus we are the holy name. This was actually the teaching demonstrated by Yeshua. Therefore, the Divine One is not a God we should pray to, but rather manifest. Because when we are aware of the Holy One in us, we are actually the gift for fallen humanity. Notice how the fall of humanity came about when they mixed with the humanoids known as the serpent, reptilian beings that wanted to escape the laws of Jehovah Elohim, which were draconian species, architects, fallen architects that had modified reality. Notice that Jehovah Elohim is not a name of one single entity, but Jehovah is the popular mispronunciation of Yud Hei Vav Hei, which in this case is the falsification of the four aspects of the divine name. There is a false divine name, because they had four bodies as well, but they used divine energy and divine knowledge with selfish interests, and this was the problem. This is why this universe has not been created by a benevolent God. This is rather the modification of an original, eternal universe that was never created. Actually, in the first sentence of the book of Genesis, we read, Bereshit bara Elohim, which means in the beginning, or rather in the head, because the Hebrew language is ideographic, and it can be read as Beit, which is house or inn, Reish, which is head, in the cosmic head, Bara, organized, Elohim, the forces of nature. So the forces of nature organized, Ashamaim, which is, as we saw, the kingdom of the divine soul, Be'et Haaretz, and the earth. However, the text continues saying that it all became void and disorganized, Tohu Vabohu, a state of chaos that was not from the original universe. The original universe was a cosmos, was order, and it simply grew as a tree, spontaneously. It was not created. The Holy One simply opened a space where the authentic reality, the tree of lives, grew, developing different species. As a tree, it was not a creation like that of an architect. The architects were the ones that modified the original reality, generating this fallen, chaotic universe in which planets have beings that eat each other, stars that clash against each other, planets that suffer catastrophes, all of which was caused by the modifications of the fallen architects. They, with their mind, modified the species, the genome of the species. And eventually, this generated a chaos that required rectification, modifications. This is why in the system of the fallen architects, there is what Jewish Kabbalists call tikkun, rectification. Or in Oriental teachings, they speak of karma. We are made to believe that we have to pay for something that we have not done, that we have to rectify. Paying for something that we have not done is unfair. We simply have to go back inwards to the original state, manifesting the divine verb. Let's remember that the original state of humanity was with those divine bodies, not with the bodies that we have. Our physical bodies descend from the so-called Cain humanity, which was already the result of eating from the tree of knowledge of good and bad. This took place when the spiritual humanity mixed with the reptilian humanoids known as the serpent, Nahash, which had a very rebellious nature and wanted to escape the state of slavery organized by the first architects, which belonged to the Jehovah Elohim type of beings, known as Enlil in the Sumerian mythology, Zeus in the Greek mythology, which were surely draconian in nature. They were actually the makers of the serpent, as we read in Genesis 3. And they were actually the ones ruling planets and satellites, establishing a system of exploitation because they used the energies of the living beings as a source of energy for their enterprises, planetary enterprises. And this is why the serpent accused them and supposedly wanted to help the spiritual humanity, which came to inhabit the species made by those draconian species. But in the end, all we have is a mixture of everything, in which the problems only multiplied. Neither the first architects nor the second architects, the serpent, Enki, Prometheus, have the truth. They all have failed modifying reality. And nowadays the battle of the gods continues, because the so-called God accuses the serpent for being tempting and accuses humanity for being sinful, whereas the serpent, the fallen gods, the lower architects, accuse God, Lord God, Jehovah Elohim, for enslaving humanity with unfair laws. However, both of them have modified reality with selfish, rebellious purposes. Therefore, we should not follow any of them. And of course, this implies not following the structure of religions, which use rituals and meditations in order to release energies for the gods and rectify, pay debt, pay for karma. There are even methods of numeric, symbolic meditation in which people visualize sequences of numbers in order to get healing, or visualizes letters in order to get benefit from the action of angels. And this is putting our attention outwards, not in the true divine reality of life, the divine verb of unconditional love, true life, conscience and serenity, which lead us to develop the four bodies and cancel all the constrictive laws of this fallen universe. Therefore, it's true love and true conscience what we need in order to find healing, because the more unconditional love and conscience and life we develop, the deeper we go within, finding true serenity, being able to eat little, be more in contact with the energy of life, and allow the body to self-heal, finding ways to become what we really should be, cells in the cosmic body of mankind, the true original man, the true Father, which is the first expression of the innominable Holy One, the being which is not a God, because it's pure humility. and is not above anyone, is even in everything, is the all in everything. Even the fallen god and gods have inside the eye of the true being, but they do not recognize that truth. And for now, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for watching and listening. And until the next time, blessings.